This is a Year 2 training video to support teachers with assessing children's writing. I'm going to start by looking at the statutory frameworks for the end of Year 2. And we're going to start off by looking at working at the expected standard. So I'm going to get in the zone of what end of Year 2 expectations looks like, and you may wish to use the statutory exemplification alongside this, which is really massively useful. I'm going to start with the top statement. Write simple, coherent narratives about personal experiences and those of others, real or fictional. Now that statement is absolutely key to children being at the expected standard at the end of Year 2. And I want to really particularly focus in on the word coherent. I've recently delivered some training for the Standards and Testing Agency to other authorities in the country, and we really unpicked what that term coherent means. So there are 5 main elements to the term coherence. The first one, as you can imagine, is about demarcating sentences correctly with capital letters and full stops. And of course, if a sentence or a sequence of sentences isn't demarcated accurately, then of course it isn't coherent. It doesn't make sense to the reader. And that is there as the third bullet point on the assessment framework, that children have to demarcate most sentences in their writing with capital letters and full stops. So that's your first element of coherence. The next one is the next bullet point down, to use present and past tense mostly correctly and consistently. Again, of course, if a reader is reading some writing and it's dipping in and out of different tenses, or the tense is inaccurate, then of course it loses sense for the reader and isn't coherent. So that's the second element. The third element is your 5th bullet point down, to use coordination and some subordination to join clauses. Now, that term is absolutely key to writing flowing for the reader, to it making sense and not be stilted short sentences. It's also in the statements for the expected standard at the end of Year 6. So it's a really important statement. And if children aren't using coordination and subordination, it doesn't matter what else they've got, they cannot be working at the expected standard. If you take a moment to look at Jamie's writing, he is the working towards child in the statutory exemplification. And his writing doesn't look bad on the surface, but when you unpick it, the only conjunction he's using is and. And for that reason, and that reason only, he's judged to be working towards the expected standard rather than working at the expected standard. So coordination and subordination is key when children are writing. Just bear in mind that the examples in brackets are examples, and to be assessed as working at the expected standard at the end of Year 2, children only need to be using a couple of those examples for coordination and subordination. That's really important to remember. Now, the other 2 statements that make up coherence aren't actually featured in the assessment framework, but they are in the curriculum. And this is Appendix 2 from the National Curriculum, Vocabulary, Grammar and Punctuation. And if you have a look carefully at that, you will see that in the second column here, which is your sentence level aspects, you've got expanded noun phrases for description and specification. That is one of the elements of coherence, that children have provided detail for the reader to help them make sense of a piece of writing. And the other one, also in the same column, are the different functions, the different types of sentences: statement, question, exclamation or command. Again, they're not on the assessment framework, but they are in the curriculum. And of course, you will see that using a variety of different sentence types in a piece of writing does support the reader with engaging with that writing. So that's statement, question, exclamation or command. and that exclamation does mean a sentence that begins with what or how and has a verb in it. If it didn't have a verb in it, it wouldn't be a sentence. So how fantastic it was, or what a great day we had, how amazing it was. It doesn't mean to say that all sentences with an exclamation mark or all writing and phrases with an exclamation mark are exclamation sentences, and they still contribute to the different types of punctuation that a child might use. So you might have help or amazing or wow, and that's still okay. But as far as an exclamation sentence goes, it begins with how or what and it has a verb in it somewhere, otherwise it wouldn't be a sentence. Now those are the elements of coherence. Children won't be showing all of those in every piece of writing or all the time, but they're one of the things that you would look for when you are looking to see if the child fulfills the statement of being able to write simple, coherent narratives. And that's why on my assessment grid here, of course it made sense to include all the statements that are in the assessment framework, but in red I've also put the elements from the national curriculum that aren't in the assessment framework, so that evidence can still be gathered for those, and children's writing hopefully will become more coherent. In year one of the statements for composition is to be able to read their writing to check it makes sense, and I think that's important in every year group. And I think when you are supporting children with that, bringing in those 5 elements of coherence for them and really unpicking them will support them with knowing what making sense means. Quite often you'll say, does it make sense? And they go, yes. Do they actually know what making sense means? Do they know that it's about the demarcation, the tense, the use of coordinating, subordinating conjunctions, expanded noun phrases and different sentence types? And when you're supporting children with editing the writing, then you can look at each one of those in turn with them and ask them to then edit their own writing in light of that. That is still okay for independence. You can guide them through their editing as long as you don't tell them where they need to edit. They can use anything in their environment, and that also might mean that you do some work around copying, because children do find it very tricky to copy, and if they can't copy, they can't use anything in their environment. So spending time working on that will really support them.